Hey everyone, welcome to Cassandra.Lunch number 107. We'll give everyone a couple more minutes to file in and we'll get started soon shortly. Alrighty, let's go ahead and cut the music. Hey everyone, welcome to Cassandra.Lunch number 107. Today's talk is going to be on Cassandra Guardrails. I believe it's a new feature in Cassandra 4.0 or 4. And today's talk is going to be given by Dipan Shah, who's an engineer here at Anant. Co-organizers for this event are Rahul and myself. We are guest speakers, as well as sponsors. If you're looking to sponsor Cassandra.Lunch or our sister lunch, Data Engineers Lunch, feel free to reach out to me. My email is listed below, as well as check out our socials. We do put out a form if you want to sign up to give a talk at Cassandra.Lunch or Data Engineers Lunch. I'll also drop the link in the YouTube chat so you can find it there as well. We're a part of Data Community DC. Data Community DC believes in building inclusive environments and mind your race, gender, sexual orientation. Everyone is welcome, and we expect the respect to be given to all. Data Community DC is built of a bunch of different organizations. Our sister lunch, Data Engineers Lunch, falls under Data Wranglers DC. So if you're interested in all the various organizations under Data Community DC, you can find out more at datacommunitydc.org. So what do we cover here at Cassandra.Lunch? We cover everything that is Cassandra, talks Cassandra, or plays well with Cassandra in the ecosystem, whether that be open source Cassandra like today, enterprise or variants such as DataStax, Scylla, Yugabyte, Keyspaces, Cosmos DB, as well as things in the ecosystem like Kafka, Spark, Airflow, etc. If anyone's new here, say hi, hello in the YouTube chat. What do you hope to get out of Cassandra Lunches? Is there something you would like to talk about at Cassandra Lunch? Group rules, if you have a question, ask it, drop it in the chat. The guest will get to it, as well as at a good stopping point. And if you have any experience with the topic that we're talking about, feel free to drop it in the YouTube chat as well. Here at Anant, we design, build, and manage global real-time data analytics platforms surrounding Cassandra, Spark, and Kafka. So Cassandra is our bread and butter. DataStax is a partner and sponsor. GW University helps provide venue space when we have in-person events. We also have some organizational and institutional sponsors. If anyone is looking for a job or is offering any jobs, feel free to drop links in the YouTube chat, as well as any meetups, hackathons, conferences, or classes you would like to promote. Feel free to drop those in the YouTube chat. Cassandra World Party 2022 is happening soon, so don't forget to register for that. The link for that is in the YouTube chat. Our CEO Rahul Singh will be giving 2 talks at Apache Cassandra World Party, so feel free to register and check those out. Anant is hiring full-time, part-time positions, data platform operator, engineer, architect. You can find out more at careers.anant.us. Upcoming events: data engineers lunches happen on Mondays at noon Eastern currently, and Cassandra lunches happen on Thursdays, noon Eastern currently, but we are exploring a more versatile time frame, so that way we can cater to a live video for a worldwide audience. All these videos are available on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/AnantCorp. If you're watching this on YouTube, don't forget to like and subscribe. We will be starting to stream directly to LinkedIn as well. So if you're watching this on LinkedIn in the future or etc., don't forget to like and subscribe, as well as turn on notification bells, so that way you get notified whenever we do go live or whenever we post a new video. Cassandra.Link should be your number one resource for all things Cassandra. If you have any questions or you want to find hand curated articles, videos, etc., about Cassandra or things in the context of Cassandra, check out Cassandra.Link. All of the resources are curated by the team here at Anant. And again, as mentioned, we've released our 5th Apache Cassandra Runbook for free. It's available. The link is in the YouTube chat. And get it while it's gone, because we are quitting publication of this soon. So we'll be releasing our 6th Runbook. So get this while you can. And with that, we will hand it over to our speaker for today, Dipan Shah.
Hello. Let me quickly share my screen. Yep. And it should be visible now. Upon, can you just confirm if you're able to see the screen?
Yep.
All right. Perfect. Okay. Hope everyone's doing well. So, my name is Deepan. I'm an engineer here at Anant, and today we are going to talk about a new version. A new functionality actually that's coming up with Cassandra version 4.1. So that is guardrails. Now we'll talk about this in detail. We're going to cover various topics like what does guardrails do, what is its actual purpose, what was the actual reason why this was built, right, and how you can actually use this in production. And then we also have a short demo. We don't have much for the demo, but then I have a OneNote cluster, a OneNote cluster, which we can use to test this out, right? See how this actually works and what it actually provides to the operators out in the world that use Cassandra. Right. So, starting with the basics, what are guardrails? So, guardrails is a new framework that has been developed for Apache Cassandra that allows operators to basically restrict some utilities, some functionalities to handle the way developers or anyone else in general interacts with Cassandra. So some features in Cassandra, people have a very wide control over it. They can do whatever they want, and sometimes the cluster stability or a node's stability gets affected due to that. So that is the purpose behind guardrails. So the developers behind Apache Cassandra, they're providing a functionality where the operators are getting some control over what developers can do on a cluster, right? Now, this is going to be available from Apache Cassandra version 4.0. This is in alpha state right now. So the version that we're going to test this on is the same one, that is 4.1 alpha. It will become generally available in some time, but we're going to talk about this today. And this functionality in some ways has been available in DSE version 6.8 also. That's DataStax Enterprise. And you'll find some similarities with some existing functionalities that we have within Apache Cassandra, like version 3.11 or the existing version 4.0. But we'll talk about that too. Right. Now, yeah. So what problems does it actually solve? I did give you some idea about this, but like operators like me who manage Cassandra clusters, right, have faced problems where developers might deploy some code, or there's someone who has access to this cluster, perform certain operations which are not like suitable for a Cassandra cluster, or something that like is not scalable. Like if you have a small cluster, it would work fine, but as in when your cluster grows and as in when its importance increases, right, in the form of like the operations that it supports, you don't want certain things to happen over there, and when they happen, everyone gets affected. So this is the problem, or this is the problem that we are finding, we are trying to find a solution for, right. Now till now, what people like me do is we try to publish best practices or anti patterns which we send to developers, which we send to different teams. Like it could be like say any team that is working or using your Apache Cassandra cluster, right? And we try to educate them, saying that okay, this is something that you should not do on a Cassandra cluster. Like allow filtering. Everyone knows that okay, you don't use allow filtering queries in production, but when that happens, you don't have a way to stop them, and like unless you identify who's doing that and you go ahead and actually tell them no, don't do that because that is affecting me, right? So we can educate them right now, but we don't have a very good control over what they can do on the cluster. So Guardrails provides a solution where for individual things, right, you don't have one solution for everything. You have individual controls where you can try to say that okay, this is what I'm going to allow on this cluster, and this is what I'm not going to allow, and that is how this is going to function, right? And as I mentioned earlier, there are some options that you already have in the earlier versions of Apache Cassandra, right? So say you have tombstone limits right now. So in the current versions, if you go inside your Cassandra.YAML, you'll see that you have a default value for a warning threshold for the number of tombstones that are scanned when a select query is executed, or you have a failure threshold, right? Now these are like numbers that people came up with after experiencing certain issues, where people say that okay, ideally I should not have more than 1,000 or 10,000 tombstones on a single select query, but it is possible, it happens sometimes. So if that happens, I'm going to put a warning message inside my Cassandra system.log and say that okay, I'm seeing that there are like 10,000 tombstones, 20,000 tombstones that was scanned for this particular query, but I'm still allowing the query. I'm not going to allow it, like I'm not going to fail it, but this is a warning for you that okay, you might need to look into this. And as soon as you cross the 100,000 tombstones threshold per query, which is the default limit that you have, you obviously can change it. But if a certain select query exceeds that 100,000 limit, tombstone limit, your query fails, irrespective of it having as much data it was able to collect or not, right? So you had certain features like this for tombstones, for batch limits, for disabling the usage of materialized views till now, right? But that is like what you had till now. You did not have anything else. Like I talked about allow filtering. You did not have a way to disable allow filtering completely, right? So this is what is coming up with guardrails. And the good thing about that is that uh, this is a framework that is being developed. So you like the
Hey,
developers
Deepan,
the
can
behind.
I interrupt you real quick? Do you mind
Yeah,
hitting the
sure.
hide button?
Oh yeah, sure.
Yep. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. All right. Yeah. So okay, where was I? Yeah. All right. So the problems that we were able to solve till now is we were able to have limits for tombstones. We were able to have limits for batches. Like these are configurable limits, but we were able to disable or enable materialized views, right? But all of these were separate implementations. Now you have a common framework that can be used to create certain functionalities, like that a common framework that can be used to restrict or allow certain like certain ways how operators or how developers can deal with a Cassandra cluster, right? So the options that the new framework allows is that it allows you to say disable or enable a function, like a feature, like it could be materialized views, it could be allow filtering or something of that sort. It allows you to limit the usage to certain parameters also, so that you can say that okay, if I'm going to create a table, I'm not going to allow anyone to create a table without compression, for example, right? So when you create this table, uh, you expect compression by default. That is what the operators or the architects think the cluster should function, right? And if someone sends a schema where they are trying to create an uncompressed table, I won't allow that. So this is one example of how guardrails can function and how the framework can be used, right? And then you also have like tombstones and batches. You also have a way to define warning and error thresholds. So the soft and the hard limits, right? Where you can say that, okay, as soon as I hit a certain threshold for a certain feature, I'm going to log a warning. And if it exceeds this number, I'm going to completely fail it, right? So these three options are how guardrails can work in general. And it depends on what functionality that you're trying to implement. You will define the limit or the enabling or disabling part or the allowing specific value part for that particular feature. Now, one more thing is this framework now validates. You give it some parameters, right? But where does the validation happen? The validation happens at two different places. There are certain features that are validated when a query is getting executed. That is at the SQL layer, right? You have your Cassandra query, you try to execute it, and the database engine can calculate it at that time, understand, okay, if this is an operation that I should allow or not, and then allow it or fail it accordingly. Then there are certain operations that work in the background, like you have certain things which cannot be calculated immediately at the beginning, right? While it is being performed, or something that needs aggregation which is not possible straight away. So that won't happen while a query is getting executed, but there will be background threads that will be taking care of this stuff, calculating if everything is working as expected or not, and then log a warning inside your system.log, right? Or if it fails it, it'll log a error message over there. We'll still talk about this in detail how it works, but right now, like, let's talk about certain examples. Right now we're trying to understand how this is going to work. But let's say the allow filtering example that I was talking about earlier, right? This is an example of a guardrail that gets calculated or gets validated at the SQL level, right? So say I connect to my SQL shell and execute a query saying that, okay, select star from this table where this data is there, and then say allow filtering, right? So if in your Cassandra.YAML, if you say allow filtering enabled is false, then this query is not going to work. Okay, you'll get a message saying, like, if you can see the image over there, it says it is an invalid request, right? So the guardrail allow filtering is violated, and querying with allow filtering is not allowed on this particular cluster. Now, yeah, one additional thing, as we implement things in Cassandra, right? All these settings are node level settings that go inside the Cassandra.YAML of each and every node of your cluster, right? So you need to ensure that you apply these changes. If you're saying that, okay, allow filtering should be disabled, so allow filtering enabled false is set. Allow filtering enabled flag is set to false. You'll have to change this on all the nodes of your cluster, and yeah, it requires a restart. And if anyone after that tries to execute a query with the allow filtering option, it will not work, right? Till now, operators were worried, okay, how I'm going to control if someone does this or not. People like me used to look at the logs, have some sort of log analysis tools, aggregation tools that would take care of this and notify us if something goes wrong, right? Now you don't have to worry about it. You don't have to let your cluster get affected, then you receive a notification, then you take care of the problem. You can uh, disable this feature completely, right? Another useful example, that the like another useful feature that the guardrails provides is setting a limit to the number of tables that you can have on a cluster. Now, this is not something that everyone thinks about, but there are certain places where you want to limit the number of tables that you are going to host on a cluster. Okay, this is a cluster-wide setting. This is not a key space level setting. So I know my my warning threshold over here is very low, but yeah, people do recommend that you should not have, say, about like more than 200 tables on a cluster. uh, Everyone's limits are going to vary, but the general recommendation is about 200. You can like change it according to your requirement, but for this example, assume that I felt that, okay, As soon as I cross the 20 table threshold, I need a warning message where I can be notified that, okay, you're crossing this threshold, and now you should be careful while creating new tables over here, right? So as soon as I try to create a table over here, I get a warning. Now the SQL client, right? Like it could be, say, you have a deployment mechanism, right? You have a client that is getting connected to your cluster, deploying this schema, and then coming back. The client will also get a warning, and a warning will get logged into your server.log also. And you can look at these logs and get a message saying that, okay, this warning has been violated, and the current number of tables, okay, so I'm sorry, this is an example of 6, but then the current number of tables, which would be the 21st one that I'm trying to create over here, exceeds the warning threshold of 20 that I've given over here, right? Or in the example, I had 5 over there. But then as soon as you cross the warning threshold, the operation is not aborted. It is able to execute successfully. The table will get created, but you'll get a warning inside your logs and for the client too. And besides warning, I might also have a fail threshold, right? As soon as it exceeds 30, I don't want to allow any more tables. I don't want anyone else to create a table over here. So I'll say my tables fail threshold is 30, and anyone goes and tries to create a table over here, that operation will get failed, right? And again, this is just one example of what you can do with guardrails at the SQL level. Now, how do you generally look at this? Now, you have this information, but how you are going to use this, right? So these guardrail events are logged in, as I told you, gets logged at the client level. Like the client receives a notification, or it goes inside your server.log. Now, it is not possible for you to continuously monitor your server.log. Say you have a 15 node cluster, right? You're not going to look at the logs for each and every node that you have. So what you're going to do is you're going to have a log aggregation tool. It could be anything. You can write a custom script that looks at your logs periodically. You can have tools that do this for you, right? You have Splunk, you have Graylog, you have your ELK stack that does this for you. So you'll aggregate your logs over there, and this is ideally what you should be doing for anything in Cassandra, right? For any of your logs in Cassandra or a distributed environment, you'll set up warnings, or you'll set up alerts for warnings and error messages that contain the message guardrail inside it, right? As you can see, the error message that I have over here, this is from the system.log file. It says that guardrail tables violated, cannot have more than 2 tables, and they're trying to abort the creation of that table. But if you try to look at the message, it contains either error, so it will contain an error message or a warning message, and the guardrail text, right? If you want to set up a very specific alert, you can set it up on the basis of whichever guardrail you're trying to monitor. Or if you're trying to set up a very generic alert while trying to figure out how you're going to use it eventually, or which team should be notified for which notification, right? uh, you can have a very generic alerting mechanism where you say that, okay, as soon as I see error and guardrail within a single log message, I'm going to notify my operations team, who can maybe look at the problem and then notify the relevant team. And as your model matures, you'll have notifications that go to the team that is directly responsible for it, right? Now, I just talked about 2 examples earlier. As of now, I think there are more than 25 or 30 that are already available, right? But we are going to talk about a few that are interesting, few that people would be interested in and using in production. So, one example of that is secondary indexes, right? We've all how I talked about the best practices guide or the anti-patterns guide and all of those things. You always try to say that, okay, you can use secondary indexes or you cannot, or if you are going to use it, I don't want more than 2 secondary indexes or more than 5 secondary indexes on a particular table, right? So when you do that, you do not have a control over it. But right now, for secondary indexes, what you can do is you can say, okay, am I going to allow any secondary index? If yes, then I'll set it to true. If I don't want to allow anything, I'll set it as false, right? And if I'm setting it as true, how many number of, what is the number of indexes that you want to be notified on? Like, say, what is the warning threshold and what is the error threshold, right? So as soon as the limit crosses 10, you're not going to get any more secondary indexes on that particular table. So that is how you control the usage of this thing, right? And yeah, one more thing. By default, because this is backward compatible, by default all of these settings are disabled, right? So if you look at we look at the Cassandra.yaml file for version 4.1. But if you look at it, everything is commented out for now. Everything is disabled, and it is expected to work as it was working in, say, version 3.11 or version 4. You can have n number of secondary indexes. You can disable it if you want, but by default it is going to be allowed, right? How you have this example of UDTs over here, where say you want to limit the number of fields that you have inside a UDT. So I'll say, okay, I don't want my UDT to have more than 10 fields inside it. So I'll say, I don't want a warning threshold. It can be a low number or it can be anything else. But my fail threshold is going to be 10. So anything, if a UDT has more than 10 fields, I'm going to fail that. So that is something like that is a kind of usage that you can have over here. Like I have faced a problem with UDTs earlier, where large UDTs, if we had them and then if we try to alter them, right? Say if I have a 10-15 field UDT, and if I try to alter it, add a 16th or a 17th column over there, we used to face corruption issues for that particular table. I'm not sure if anyone else has faced it, but that was a very, very unique issue that we were facing. So this could have been very useful for us in that scenario, where I could have limited the number of fields that I'm going to allow inside a UDT. So till now, we were talking about SQL level guardrails, which get interpreted at the query level itself. There are a few more that we are going to talk about, which work in the background, right? Now, because they are in background, they are not associated with any specific query, right? It is not a single query that we are talking about. Yes, it can get triggered because of a query, but you don't have a direct relation to them, right? And the purpose for them basically is to avoid a read before write operation. We don't do that in Cassandra. We try not to do it at all, right? Even for the guardrails functionalities, they are trying to avoid a read before write operation, and evaluation for certain things happen in the background. Now, some examples of that, right, are, say, for example, I can limit the amount of disk that my Cassandra service can use. Okay. Now, this will seem redundant compared to how you have your normal monitoring applications will notify you on the basis of, say, 70, 80, 90% disk utilization or CPU utilization, right? But this came up because, say, if someone is very strict that, okay, I don't want more than 50% disk space usage for my Cassandra cluster. All of my disks should have at least 50% free disk space. And I want to get notified, but I don't want to change the default limits that I have for my monitoring application, right? The monitoring application generally notifies you at the 80 or the 90% threshold. And for the other disks that you might have on this node, you still want it to be 90%, and you don't want to go ahead and change the limit for each and every volume that you have for a Cassandra node, the data volume that you might have. So what you can do is you can set up a warning for disk space usage, saying that, okay, I'm going to get a warning message as soon as it crosses 50, right? So that when Splunk notifies me that, okay, this event has been triggered, I know that I need to scale my cluster horizontally, right? That can be one use case. Another use case can be, say, you have a very large volume and you still want to restrict. You don't want to get notified at 90% of a very large volume, or 50% or even 50% of a very large volume. You're going to use that for a backup purpose or something else. You're using it for two different purposes, basically. I don't know why you're doing that, but say you're doing it. And I'll say that, okay, I'm going to limit my Cassandra usage. You have an option for that too, right? Yeah, I'm going to limit my usage for Cassandra to a certain GB number. Say it could be 1 TB, and then I'm going to get a warning at the 50% limit of 1 TB, though my volume is of 5 TB. Okay, this is also allowed. This is an option that is already available in version 4.1. So now, because this cannot be correlated to a direct query, or because it is very costly to do it for each and every operation, this happens in the background, right? And you get a notification. You don't get a notification at the client level because it is not related over there. You just get a message, a warning, or an error message inside your system.log file. One more example is the number of items that you can have in a collection or a non-frozen collection, right? Sometimes you say that, okay, I don't want my collection to grow too large. Okay, But when you try to add one more item to that collection, uh, a SQL operation trying to evaluate if it exceeds the total number allowed would require a read before write operation. So we are trying to avoid that also over here, where we are saying that, okay, uh, you can maybe add that item. It will get evaluated in the background, and you'll get notified about it in the system.log file. So these are like some of the guardrails that work in the background, right? And okay, I think I've been going on long, like, for a very long time. Do we have any questions till now? Okay,
Yep. If anyone has any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat as well.
yeah. Feel free to ask questions. Right, this is new functionality. I think I was going on and on. I'm sorry for that. I did not stop for questions earlier. But yes, if you have any, you can send them right away. We can take questions at the end too. But yeah, just drop it in the messages. All right. If like by the time we get any messages, I'll try to cover a few more options that we have. Right. Uh, uh, like these are some things. These are some of the guardrails that we would suggest that you guys use in production. Right. Uh, we talked about allow filtering. We talked about number of tables. Your mileage may vary, but for example, you have a guardrail for replication factor also. Right. So you want a certain replication factor for any key space that gets created on your cluster. If it is a production cluster, right, it does not make sense for you to have just one replica set. So I'm going to use that number for any production cluster that I have from now on, where I'm going to say that, okay, ideally, I want three replicas for all of my key spaces. Okay. And if it is less than three, I'm not going to allow it at all. But if I'm trying to be a bit more adjustable, I'll say, okay, warn me when they have two replicas only, right? I should at least be notified when someone creates a key space over here which has just two replicas to it, so that even if I'm not like stopping them from doing that, I can at least understand that people are creating key spaces with a replication factor that I think is not ideal for production, and I can maybe talk with them and understand why they're doing that, right? So I try to tell them that, okay, this is what we generally do for production, this is how our backup strategies are aligned, and this is why I would recommend that you have three replicas. But if you have less than that, that's fine, let's talk about it. So this is how you can control how you can't how you like someone does not have a non-ideal replication factor on your production cluster, right? Additionally, you can also restrict the kind of consistency levels, right, that are allowed or not allowed on your cluster. So we saw two types of guardrails till now, right? We saw the one that had soft limits, hard limits, and we saw one where you can enable or disable a feature. This is the third type of guardrail over here, where see, the first option says, say, read consistency levels warned. Okay, so what you want to do is you'll say, warn me if someone runs a query with a read consistency of local one. Okay. Ideally, I've talked with my developers. I've told them that, okay, because we want to be highly consistent, we are going to have local quorum for reads and writes. Okay, that is something that is what we are going to try to support over here, and that is how we're going to stay consistent, right? So if anyone runs it with local one, I know that my writes are happening with local quorum, and if anyone runs with a read consistency of local one, I might have data inconsistencies, right? Whichever data that they're trying to select. So I need a warning for that. So you can get warnings for read consistencies that do not match what you think it should be. Additionally, I also want to disallow queries with a consistency level of all, right? I don't want them to go and talk to each and every replicas where I know I'm writing with local quorum. It's okay if they query with local quorum itself. They don't need to. They don't need a consistency of all. That is going to put additional load on my cluster, which is not necessary. So I can warn on local one. I can allow local quorums. I don't mention it at all, and I can disallow anyone to run a query with consistency all. I could have also disallowed a query with consistency of local one, but that is something that I'm leaving up to the developers to decide. So that is why I have two options where you either get a warning on some settings, or you completely disallow some settings, right? And we can obviously have the same thing for write consistencies also. There's one more good thing that I would suggest that you use for production is the number of partition keys that a select query can have within an in clause, right? So say you have a query where you say select star from table, where primary key in, and you're providing multiple options over there. Now, when you provide in, and if you have a primary key over there, you know you're trying to hit multiple partitions, and that means that you're trying to hit multiple nodes of your cluster at the same time. So that is again something that can put load on your cluster. But because this is a business requirement, you say that, okay, we'll allow it. But we'll say that, okay, you should not put more than 10 primary keys inside my in clause, right? So earlier, it just used to be a recommendation that the development team would receive from our side. Now we have an option to disable it completely, in a way that I say that, okay, I will receive a warning if you exceed 10, and I will disallow anything that goes above 15 or 5 and 10, whatever, right? And additionally, you now have an option to limit the number of materialized views that you create per table. Now, mm, we already have a flag to completely disable the usage of materialized views, right? That was already available in version 3.11.2. But right now over here, we are now saying that, okay, we are going to allow a certain number of materialized views per table. And again, the same warning and the failure threshold that you have for them, right? Again, this is not an exhaustive list that you have. I'll show it to you where you can find all of those things, right? But before we go ahead with that, I want to tell you that there are some exceptions to this too. So the exceptions basically are that these features that we talked about till now are only applicable to regular users, regular roles on your Cassandra cluster. So, for example, if you have a super user, right? If you are working with a default Cassandra super user, or if you have created a new Cassandra, a new super user that can be of any name, these guardrails do not apply to them. Okay, so if you're trying to do something, if you're trying to test it out on your own, just ensure that you are doing this with a regular user. Don't do it with super user, because even if my limit of tables is 5 over there, you like with a super user, you'll be able to create even 100, 200, 300, whatever number of tables that you want to create. Okay, and the good thing basically about this is, though this is an exception where super users are allowed, this framework is an API that is available for everyone. So there can be third party implementations of the same functionality using the same features, which can restrict the usage for super users also, or can limit it to a certain set of users only, right? If you would provide privileges to certain roles, you can do something of that kind too, but that is not available by default. This is an API that you'll have to use to build these features on your own. All right, so let's go to our cluster, right? Okay, let me just quickly.
Quick, there are some questions in the chat, real quick, Dipan, before you start. So the two questions related to what level the guardrails are configured. So, are the guardrails only in Cassandra.YAML? And then, if so, what happens if some nodes are configured with guardrails and others aren't? Can you have different thresholds for different data centers?
Yes, all right. Yeah. So, yes, guardrails options are available within the YAML file itself, your Cassandra.YAML. So, anything that you want to do, it has to go from your Cassandra.YAML itself. Now, how it will function if you have different numbers, or if you enable it on one node and if you don't do it on the other? This is how, basically, where the query basically gets evaluated, right? So, if my query is getting evaluated on a node where this is not enabled, then the guardrail is not applicable for that query. If it is getting evaluated on a node where it is enabled, or where if you have a certain threshold that is getting violated, you will receive an error. So yes, it is very important that you try to keep, I would not say try to keep it consistent. You should keep it consistent. And yes, you can have different values for different DCs. So say for example, if I have a primary DC and a DRDC, or if I have one for transactions and one for analysis, if you have different use cases of that sort, then yes, I would recommend that you have different for them, right? So like again, that is going to depend on the use case that you have, but it's okay if you have different values over there. But you should just understand that how we like say for example, if you talk about consistency, right? Uh, if you have three replicas on your primary DC and just one replica on your DRDC, for example, if this kind of setup that you have, your thresholds just keep them accordingly. And how consistencies work, you have local quorum or just quorum. Just think of it like that, where this is getting evaluated at the node level, not even the DC level. You're planning to happen at the DC level, but the evaluation is at the node level itself. And yeah, I can maybe this is I think a good time to look at the YAML file also. Yeah, Arvind, was that the question, or was there another one too?
Yeah, they were both related to it, but can you try refreshing or not refreshing? Just unmuting and remuting real quick. I think your audio is coming through a little scratchy.
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Is this better?
Speaking. Yep.
All right. Okay, great. So let me just okay. So this is like you have this node. You can see this node now, right? I hope that part is working fine. Like maybe let me check the comments if I have anything. But Arpan, can you see my
Yeah.
connection?
Just the audio's acting up a little bit. If you're going to share only the putty, can you just share that specific window?
Sure. Let me do that. All right. I've done that. Yeah.
Much better.
Perfect. All right. Okay. So this is a node that I have. This is a single node cluster, right? Where I have the default Cassandra like version 4.1 running over here. I'll just quickly connect to it to show that this is version 4.1. Right. This is 4.1 alpha that I have over here. Right. And let's just go and look at the YAML first. Right. Okay. So as I mentioned earlier, right, if you look at all these settings that we have for guardrails, it basically starts from here. There are a few at the top too, but like some of them are experimental features. Some of them are a bit different, right? But if you look at this, everything is disabled by default. This is a setting that I've just enabled, right? So even this was disabled by default. So these are the settings that you'll have inside your Cassandra.yaml, and what you'll have to do is you'll have to enable the ones that you want, right? Depending on the definition that you have on the top. So for example, for tables want threshold, it clearly says guardrails to warn or fail when creating more user tables and the threshold. And it defaults to -1, which is basically disabled. So even if you uncomment it and set it to -1, it is disabled. And if you comment it, it's obviously disabled, right? If you want to enable it, you uncomment it and set a value that you want over there. And like these are the different kind of guardrails that you have currently that are available, right? We will like look at them a bit later, but I just want to give you an example first, right? Where say I connect to this, right? This is a regular user that I've created with my name, and just to show that I have a couple of key spaces that I've created over here, right? And if you look at this key space, I have two tables created over there too. Okay. Now, as soon as I try to create a table over here, say for example, I say key space 1, table 3, giving it a very simple schema, and I try to create it, it says guardrail tables violated, cannot have more than 2 tables. So aborting the creation of this table. Why? Because inside my configuration file, right, I had set my failure threshold as 2. Right, my one threshold is 1 over here, and my failure threshold is 2. So that is why it is not going to allow me to create more tables. Now, I'll show a couple more things. Say, for example, if you want to limit.
Hey, Dipan, sorry to interrupt. Is there any way we can swap the colors for this? The black on
Oh,
blue
yeah.
is a little
Yeah.
hard to see.
Yeah, sure. Let me see what color would work over here. Yeah, sorry, I did not think about this earlier. See. I'm not sure what this. Okay, this is still black. Sorry. This will go to the white, black. No, it's not. Strange. Okay. If anyone has any quick suggestions while I try to figure this out on my own, let me know. But default bold, default background. What should I try? Default. Let's say white. Will I have to reconnect? Okay, let me do it this way. Instead of trying to sort this out over here, let me just quickly put this on a notepad, right? And that should be like that should solve the visibility problem, and also uh, but I think my sharing would get wonky. All right, let me share just this. All right, is this should be better, right?
Yep.
All right. Okay, I can do this over here and then maybe just make the change and switch my screen to that particular thing, right? So what we're going to do now is we are going to uncomment key space 1 threshold and key space failure threshold, right? We can test this with anything that you want, but like key space is going to be a quick one for me. So what I'm going to say is, say, warn me when I create 4 key spaces on the cluster and start failing it once you have 5 over there, right? So this is what I'm going to try to do, right? I'll quickly just stop sharing my screen, switch to the other one. I know the visibility is bad for it, but uh, I'm sorry for that. Let's quickly make that change.
Yep. People have mentioned you can do system colors, but another suggestion is, do you have another tool you could use, like MobaX potentially, or just
I
basic putty?
I have Putty. I don't have MOBA.
Okay.
But okay, I think once I get out of the YAML file, it should be better, right? I think that is
Mhm.
the major concern. Yeah. So I've just made that change, the one that I showed on the notepad, right? And I quickly uh, drain this. I hope my screen sharing is back to the putty screen that I have. Yeah, I'm sorry, this is messy. And I just drained the node, and I am just checking if my logs, if the node has started up or not. Yeah, this is up. And we'll quickly connect back to the SQL shell, right? And we're going to say create key space. We already had 2. We are going to create the third one with replication, and I'll keep it simple. I just have a single node. I'm not worried about it. And my replication factor. Oh, I don't have user. Create privileges. Okay. uh, grant all. What was a grant syntax? Say grant create key space. Deepen. No. Okay, I'll have to quickly look this up. Yes, grant all. Create all key spaces. No. Okay. All right. Wait. I'll just try to simplify this now. I am going to switch over to my YAML, and I'll just show how this change can be done for the table limit itself. Right. I have sufficient privileges for that. I'm just going to make that change for us now, and I'll show that to you. And apologies because I did not take care of this before starting this demo. Right. So we are going to use, say, key space 1 for this example. Now, instead of key spaces, we're going to see how I change the limits on my number of tables that I can have. Right. I'm going to quickly restart the node because I just changed the limit and I need to restart the services for the limits to come into effect. Restart my service. Wait for my logs to say this is up. Yep, this is up now. We'll connect back to the SQL shell. Use key space 1. We have 2 tables right now. Okay. So what we're doing now is we're going to create one more table. Table 3. This failed earlier. I've changed my limit. I should be able to create this now. And I'm able to create it. Let's say I create table number 4. Okay. And I'm still able to create it. I create table number 5 and I've received a warning saying that guardrails table violation exceeded. Current number of table 5 exceeds the warning threshold of 4. So it allowed me to create up to 5, right? But it warned me about it. As soon as I try to create the next one, because that is my error limit, I get an error. Now, if I look at the tables that I have inside this key space, I have 5, right? I received a warning for table number 5, but I was still able to create it. But I was not able to create the 6th one because that is a limit that I have. And how we talked about the exception, right? If I try to do this using the default, let me clear my screen, right? Go to key space 1 again. Say I have 5 tables, right? But now I'm connected using the super user. Okay. So now when I try to do this using the super user and try to create the 6th table over here, I'll be able to create it. See, there's no a problem with that. So this is the current exception that you have. So if you're trying to do this, okay, think of this in 2 ways. If your current schema creation user has super user privileges, then these guardrails would not help you. So for that, you'll need a user that does not have super user privileges. That is one thing. And the second thing is, if you don't have authentication enabled on your cluster, which ideally you should not do that on prod, but if for some reason you don't have super user enabled by if you don't have authorization enabled on your cluster, right? If you're connecting with just SQL and not providing any username or password over there, then also these guardrails are not going to work for you, right? Because when you connect over there, you don't have any authentication, you don't have authorization. Cassandra has no way of determining if this is a super user or not. So even in that scenario, this is not going to work for you. And at the same time, I'll quickly show the logs also, right? You can maybe, as I said, you can grep for errors, right? And I'm sorry, yeah. If you look at the errors at the bottom, it says that guardrail tables violated, cannot have more than two tables. That is from earlier, right? But then at the bottom, you can see cannot have more than 5 tables, aborting the creation of table 6. So this is how we'll be able to see it in the logs also. And I think we are running out of time, so I'll quickly stop this, and I just need to show one final thing before moving on. Like if we can take a few more questions too. But let me just quickly switch to my demo. No, sorry, to my presentation. Right there, I also was talking about new guardrails being developed, right? So these guardrails are currently being developed, and you can actively track them on this link. I can maybe maybe if we can put this link on the chat channel if you want it, or whenever we publish something, we'll add this link over there. But if you want to look at this, just go to the Cassandra project that you have for Apache, right? Like they have their Jira dashboard over there, and try to search for guardrail, and you'll be able to see all the implementations, all the further details that you might be interested in about this. And you'll also be able to look at which new guardrails are coming up, or if there's something that you are interested in taking up, or if you're interested in contributing for highlighting that, okay, this is something that I'm interested in and this should be prioritized, you can maybe do that too, right? So that's all. That brings me to the end of the demo. Sorry, the glitches in between caused a bit of a delay, but we can have a few questions if you have them, like if people have them right now.
Yep. Feel free to drop questions in the chat.
Okay, I think people don't have questions. Like either that's great or yeah.
Yeah, there's a little bit of delay or latency between
Okay.
here and YouTube, so we'll just give them
All right.
another minute or so to drop some questions or comments. Feel free. There is some talk if you're watching this at a later point. Make sure you have the real-time chat turned on so you can see the conversations that are happening. So if you're interested in Scylla, there's some talk related to materialized views. If you're interested in that, Peter mentioned that they're working on shifting their materialized views to using Raft consensus protocol, which will make them immediately and strongly consistent with the base table. So yeah, definitely check that out. And okay, doesn't look like there's any more questions. We'll go ahead and wrap up for today. Thank you everyone for joining us here for Cassandra.Lunch. If you're watching this on YouTube, obviously don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so that way you get notified whenever we do go live and whenever we post a new video. And all these videos are available on our YouTube playlist, the Cassandra.Lunch playlist, as well as our sister lunch, Data Engineers Lunch. All those videos are also on that playlist, so feel free to keep track of those as well, or have a watch-a-thon. Maybe we can potentially in the future set up an event where we do like a group watch-a-thon. That'd be pretty fun. But yeah, let's go ahead and wrap up. Thank you everyone for joining us. Take care, and we will see everyone next week.